Peru's Prime Minister, Violeta Bermudez, has called on Congress to approve a vote of confidence in her cabinet and its work plan. A special two-day session of the UN General Assembly in response to the coronavirus pandemic and the global challenges began this Thursday. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced new localized restrictions to stem a resurgence of COVID-19 in the south of the country amid growing fears of a second wave. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Peru, where Prime Minister Violeta Bermudez, accompanied by her cabinet, appeared before Congress seeking the support of parliamentarians in a vote of confidence to allow her to implement their work plan. The main themes of the Prime Minister's presentation were elections, measures against the COVID-19 pandemic, economic revival, education, the strengthening of institutions, and the fight against corruption. Spokespersons for the Popular Action, Alliance for Progress and We Are Peru parties advanced that their lawmakers will grant the vote of confidence. Regarding the eventual arrival of a COVID-19 vaccine, Bermudez affirmed that the government is drawing up a strategic plan for its national distribution throughout 2021. The plenary session of Congress is set to continue on Friday.
Today, we come to request the confidence of the Congress of the Republic of the general policy of the government and the main measures that our administration requires. The permanence and continuity of the cabinet appointed by the President of the Republic requires this confidence.
More than a year after the coup in Bolivia, former President Evo Morales returned to the Department of La Paz this Thursday. The former president was received in the city of El Alto by members of the Movement Towards Socialism Party and by various social organizations. During the meeting, the indigenous leader thanked citizens for their support and stressed that the unity of the Bolivian people had made his return to the country possible. In this sense, he emphasized that the coup perpetrated by the far right against the government was in response to the process of nationalization of the country's natural resources, as he promoted during his administration.
The coup has not only been against Evo, not only against the social movements, but it has been against our economic program, our economic policies, our plans for the national economy. And in summary, where does that plan come from? From the professional, middle-class mining workers, the indigenous campesinos movement, on which that economic plan is based, on the nationalization or recovery of natural resources.
In Venezuela, the electoral campaign for the upcoming December 6 parliamentary elections is drawing to a close. The different political forces of the country have until midnight this Thursday to carry out campaign activities. Meanwhile, the National Electoral Council continues its tasks of packing and distributing electoral supplies. International delegations that will accompany the process continue to arrive in the country. More than 20 million Venezuelans are called to the polls to elect a new National Assembly, in a process marked by the nomination of 14,000 candidates representing more than 100 political parties, most of them from the opposition. On Wednesday, the Colombian Narco-Paramilitary and terrorist organization known as the Black Eagles threatened to kill different progressive politicians, human rights defenders and indigenous peoples who supported the recent mobilizations known as the Minga. In a statement, the paramilitary group linked to former President Álvaro Uribe declares itself against the indigenous Minga mobilization and Senator Gustavo Petro. Likewise, it threatens to kill several political leaders. The Black Eagles have been involved in the assassination of social leaders, indigenous leaders, rural workers and human rights defenders. The 42nd International Festival of New Latin American Cinema starts this Thursday in the Cuban capital, Havana. The 2020 edition has been adapted to the context imposed by COVID-19, and organisers decided to divide it into two stages. The traditional meeting in December will be only a sample of the major festival, with the main event postponed until March next year, which will see the full programme including conferences and debates. The second part will see a dialogue around the theme proposed since the closing of the previous festival, Young Cinema in Latin America. Under the slogan, "What the Doctor Prescribed," the promotional image of the 42nd edition alludes to medicine and health personnel in gratitude for their work to tackle COVID-19. The films to be presented come from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, the United States, the United Kingdom, Mexico, Peru, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Honduras, Cuba, Puerto Rico and Colombia. In Mexico, health authorities announced the signing of an agreement with the US pharmaceutical company Pfizer for the production and supply of its vaccine against COVID-19. Our correspondent Eduardo Martinez has the story.
Outside the medical center 20 de Noviembre, family members and patients who were being treated for medical conditions not related with COVID-19 must go to get their medicines or treatment to other buildings. Claudia Sanchez goes for her mother's cancer treatment and she is concerned about the disrespect to health measures.
There is supposed to be healthy distance and use of masks, but as you can see, people are all piled up. There are very long lines and this is our situation.
The
hospital located in the south of Mexico City is at maximum capacity because of an increasing number of COVID-19 infections. Only in the last week of November, the rate increased by 30%. In this context, the government informed that it signed an agreement with the United States company Pfizer for the production and supply of 34.4 million vaccines, which could be available in a few weeks.
Initially, they will be 250,000. We will try to manage this because we need 2 shots, 2 doses. Then, if they are 125,000 and 125,000, or 250,000 and 250,000, it will increase to 500,000. This is about to be solved these days.
Health authorities pointed out that the challenge is focused on the handling of the drug because it must be kept at a temperature of -75 degrees. The request for its distribution is already being analyzed by the Federal Commission for Protection Against Health Risks.
It includes planning so that Pfizer distribution will be as close as possible to the point of use, so that the deep freezing period is shortened, the distance from the product is reduced, and here we can rely on the valuable support of our armed forces.
Next Tuesday, December 8th, the National Vaccination Plan against COVID-19 will be published, but it has already been anticipated that health personnel and vulnerable population will be the first to receive the vaccine.
A special session of the UN General Assembly in response to the coronavirus pandemic and the global challenges it poses began this Thursday. The virtual meeting was attended by world leaders, heads of UN agencies and international experts who are set to discuss an urgent agenda for the pandemic and evaluate mechanisms for dealing with the virus. Leaders are to debate the intention to increase international cooperation and provide aid to the most affected countries. The multilateral body considers that the international community can address adversities through collective actions that facilitate economic recovery and health. In speaking as part of the UN special session, Cuban President Miguel DiazCanel highlighted the progress made by the country's pharmaceutical industry in developing vaccine candidates to tackle the current pandemic.
The important achievements made in the medical pharmaceutical industry and biotechnology allow us to face the disease in better conditions. 2 Cuban vaccine candidates in clinical trials are included among the 47 registered by the WHO. Faithful to our humanist vocation, 53 medical brigades have supported the fight against the disease in 39 countries, joining those that already served in 59 nations. This has been possible even under the strong, illegal and unjust blockade imposed by the US government.
Bolivian President Luis Arce emphasized that the country hopes to provide at least 3 million COVID-19 vaccine doses with the support of the international community.
Therefore, within the framework of the response to the pandemic and to prevent a resurgence that would take us away from this path, we are making the greatest efforts to acquire safe and effective vaccines that will be provided free of charge to approximately 3 million Bolivians, where vulnerable groups of our population and health workers are found. Our objective is to be able to reach this goal by the first quarter of 2021, and there is no doubt that the national cooperation of the United Nations, specialized agencies, and our friendly countries will be fundamental to this end.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed that the pandemic has caused enormous social and economic impacts because of the great inequalities in the world.
And in some situations, there was a rejection of facts and an ignorance of the guidance. And when countries go in their own direction, the virus goes in every direction. Extreme poverty is rising, the threat of famine looms. We face the biggest global recession in 8 decades, and these intergenerational impacts are not due to COVID-19 alone. They are the result of long-term fragilities, inequalities and injustices that have been exposed by the pandemic.
The president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, speaking on behalf of countries of the non-aligned movement, highlighted the implementation of a humanitarian proposal with the aim of addressing the effects caused by the pandemic.
To contribute to the global effort to address the unprecedented impacts of this universal pandemic, to find ways to provide adequate and quick inclusive assistance to the non-aligned movement member states, Azerbaijan convened a summit to respond to the COVID-19 under the banner United Against COVID-19 on May 4, 2020, resulting in the creation of a special task force to respond to COVID and to create a database that will record the most basic humanitarian needs of non-aligned countries in their fight against COVID-19.
President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan reiterated his government's support for countries and regions affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
We support countries and regions suffering from issues such as food security and the pandemic. Amidst the pandemic, we are developing social programs in 16 countries for disadvantaged groups such as the elderly, disabled people and orphans. We are developing training programs in some developing countries to produce protective equipment, personnel using local resources. Moreover, we are trying to provide financial support to some countries facing economic difficulties due to the pandemic. Our private sector is also contributing to these efforts in the public sector.
4 people died on Thursday when a chemical tank exploded at a wastewater treatment plant near Bristol in Western England. Emergency services were called after reports of an explosion at Wessex Water's Bristol Water Recycling Centre in Avonmouth at around 11:20 a.m. local time. According to local police, 3 Wessex Water employees and 1 contractor died in the blast, and a 5th person was injured, but their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening. A witness said there was a helicopter looking for missing people and that police closed a nearby road leading up to the plant.
Yeah, so I was in my work and we heard like a boom sound. It wasn't too really high, but when we heard it after like 10 minutes, we saw the helicopter, the ambulance helicopter, and the police horn just around the area. Yeah, explosion. Yeah, you can really like say explosion, nothing else. And I came here. The guys who was working here, I met him. He told me about this tank, the exploded tank. It's really bad moment for everyone. We all feel sad now for the deaths, for the casualties. That's really bad. Yeah.
US President Donald Trump refused to say on Thursday whether he has confidence in Attorney General William Barr, who has publicly contradicted his claims that the November 3rd election was marred by fraud. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump responded, "Ask me that in a number of weeks from now," when asked if he retains confidence in Barr, who's been considered a loyalist to the president. In an interview earlier this week, Barr said that the Justice Department has not found any evidence of significant voter fraud in the presidential election won by Democrat Joe Biden. Barr's comments confirm the conclusions of the Department of Homeland Security, US intelligence and independent poll watchers that the 2020 election was, in the language of government officials, the most secure in American history. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced new localized restrictions to stem a resurgence of COVID-19 in the south of the country, amid growing fears that new infections could spiral into a second wave.
A second wave, if all of us respect the rules, the measures and the protocols that have been put in place for the protection of everyone. Now, following a recommendation of the National Coronavirus Command Council, and after consultation with premiers, metro mayors, and traditional leaders, Cabinet has decided to declare the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality as a coronavirus hotspot. We must remember that as much as we want to relax, this virus does not relax. And this virus does not take a holiday.
The United Nations said on Wednesday that it had signed a deal with the Ethiopian government to allow unimpeded humanitarian access to the northern region of Tigray, at least for areas under federal government control. Confirming details of the deal at the UN headquarters in New York, the Secretary General's spokesperson said that all aid distribution would be carried out in compliance with the globally agreed principles of humanity, impartiality, independence and neutrality. The deal seeks to ensure the first food, medicines and other aid can access the region of 6 million people that has seen rising hunger due to the fighting between the federal and Tigray regional governments. Each regards the other as illegal in a power struggle that has been months in the making. For weeks, aid-laden trucks have been blocked at Tigray's borders, and the UN and other humanitarian groups expressed increasing urgency as hunger grows and hospitals run out of basic supplies like gloves and body bags. More than 1 million people in Tigray are now thought to be displaced, including over 45,000 that have fled into a remote area of neighbouring Sudan. Humanitarians have struggled to feed them as they set up a crisis response from scratch.
And colleagues that the UN in the country and the federal government of Ethiopia have signed an agreement that seeks to enable unimpeded, sustained and secure access for humanitarian personnel and services in areas under the control of the federal government in Tigray and the bordering areas of Amhara and Afar regions. We, along with our partners in Ethiopia, are engaging with the federal government and all parties to the conflict to ensure that humanitarian action in Tigray, Amhara and Afar regions, strictly based on needs and carried out in compliance with the globally agreed principles of humanity, impartiality, independence and neutrality. This includes working to ensure that people impacted by the conflict are assisted without distinction of any kind other than the urgency of their needs. Today, an assessment and response mission is taking place in Afar in the border areas, in the areas bordering Tigray to reach people who have been internally displaced by the ongoing conflict.
In the Hashaba camp in Sudan, Ethiopian physicians, medical professionals and nurses offer free treatment to refugees who fled fighting in the Tigray region.
Until yesterday 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost 15,933 refugees live in the Hashaba camp, which is an emergency center. They should be transported to Rakuba reception camp and to Tinbeta, which is now under preparation to welcome refugees.
Hungary's authorities filed Thursday to uphold their veto of the European Union's next budget and massive pandemic relief fund, saying a mechanism that ties payment of funds to rule of law principles risks derailing the bloc.
We cannot accept the budget in this form. All EU member states have the right to veto. When we talk about the rule of law, we can say that our veto would be any kind of revenge or extortion. Hungary, Poland and all member states have the right to veto. If so far no solution has been found that is acceptable to all, then further negotiations are needed. We are open to further discussions and we believe that a solution could be found, but the current draft is not the acceptable. Therefore, we can safely say that there will be no agreement based on the current draft.
The Czech government lifted some COVID-19 restrictions this Thursday after the number of new confirmed cases fell. Stores, restaurants and bars were able to reopen, but with some restrictions. Restaurants can open between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. with their capacity limited to 50%. Stores and shopping centres still have to limit the number of shoppers. The overnight curfew and ban on drinking alcohol in public places was also lifted. Services such as hair salons, fitness centres and gyms are allowed to reopen, together with zoos, museums and galleries. The wearing of masks remains compulsory in public places and inside buildings. There's also an emergency order urging people to social distance.
We were at home,
I didn't talk to people for 2 months because I don't go to work. I really didn't meet people.
I really didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't just pubs that were closed. It was everything that was closed. So I have been seeing people digitally and virtually in 2D in the last 2 months. I don't know how many hours I have spent with non-existing virtual entities. So the very fact that you can actually see somebody in real life is beautiful.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.